that 5 hours of hell, you can just terrorized, horrific, heinous hell was the easiest part of the year to come. The easiest part.
All right. Ready,
you.
girl? I love you. Welcome to Come Back with Erica Cobb, a community of folks like yourselves who are getting ready and staying ready for their next chapter. Today is one of the most rawest, realest storytelling that we've ever experienced on Come Back with Erica Cobb. And the truth is, it touches me so deeply and profoundly, not just because of our guest's today's story, but also because she's such an important person in my life. So I am honored to have her tell her story to me and all of you in hopes that it helps someone else. There are moments in life that change you forever, moments that leave scars people can't always see. And for so many survivors, the hardest part isn't just living through the trauma, it's learning how to live after it. June is PTSD Awareness Month, and my guest today is going to share with us one of the most harrowing and important conversations that we have had on Come Back with Erica Cobb. So please welcome my friend, Taylor. Hey, Taylor.
Hi, my love.
How are you feeling?
I'm nervous, but I feel good. Like there's no one else on earth I'd rather be talking to about this. But
Well, I am honored to have you tell. Obviously we've talked about your story
many times.
But honestly, between the pain and the fear and the PTSD, the masking that I have seen from you over the years, to unmask in such a profound way, not only in your personal mental health journey, but to unmask publicly is something that, quite honestly, I didn't think I would see the day. So to be here today is very meaningful to me, and I hope that it gives you some closure that you may need.
Yeah, that's really sweet. I was wondering that, like, if you ever thought we'd sit down and have this conversation in a more public way, if you thought that would ever happen.
I really didn't.
Yeah.
Because one thing about you, and as our audience will learn, is that you are a very self-actualized person. You have like a very strong degree of self-governance, which dictates a strong boundary. And a lot of those things I have deduced have come from your experiences in this world. So when we first met 7 years ago, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah. I'm happy that we're here today.
Me too.
That's right. You
Feels
ready to
good.
get into it?
Let's go.
Okay. So one thing that I'm very curious about is, how do you define your story high level, like zooming out?
Zooming out's really interesting because what I went through is not in any way for me personally like defining me. If anything, it's the aftermath and how I have made meaning of it that has really helped to kind of shape how I show up in the world and how I engage in my relationships on every level. So for me, it's a heavy story. It's a heavy amount of information. And I'm absolutely a survivor, but that's just one part of me. Like, I'm a very dynamic person. Like, you know that because you know me personally. And that's been really important. And maybe that's kind of why now has been the time for me to talk about it, because I think it's important for people to see that. Like, as much as this was a huge, incredibly life-altering experience for myself and the people close to me, it's not my identity.
It's when you say it's not your identity, like, I know that, but what I don't know is who you were before the event occurred.
Yeah.
And how would you describe that person?
I've been on my own since I was 16. So even at 22, I was probably a pretty mature 22-year-old, but I was figuring life out. And I was a flight attendant at the time, and I was traveling a lot. And I remember going through a lot of stress with work. Something had happened at work a few months prior to what happened. And I was really struggling with that. And I felt like I was depressed. I had a friend tell me that at the time. And all of it, looking back, seems so small compared to what was coming. But in that moment, I was living and creating an interesting life for myself. Like I had just started a menswear clothing brand with my dear friend Angie, and we were just getting that up and off the ground. And my dreams were very creative at the time too. Like I'm a very creative person, and I just wanted to dive more into that. And a lot of that has shifted after the fact. When something like this happens, you think, well, at least for me, like I lost who I was. I didn't know who I was. And I remember immediately after looking back to that person I was before, and that feeling like a stranger to me. And I've even told people like you, like if you had known me after my attack, you would not recognize me compared to the woman you know today. Like you would not have recognized me. And I think what's interesting is now I realize maybe you would have. I don't think I recognized me, but I think actually the people who were close to me and who knew my soul and my spirit, that actually never was lost, even though I felt very fractured from that for a long time. Yeah, I was 22. I was figuring life out and being funny and annoying. And I just started dating a guy and visiting him. He lived on the East Coast. And I had a very kind of nomadic life. But for the most part, especially in comparison to what happened, like pretty mundane, which nowadays I chase the mundane. Like that is where I want to live. Like I do not take that for granted anymore.
While we're kind of alluding to, we're obviously going to get into the event of your story, the day that changed everything.
Yeah.
But I do want to, now that we understand who you were at that point before all of this happened, I want to discuss who the perpetrator was. What was his relationship to you? Because we understand that he wasn't a stranger.
No, we had met through work. So we were part of he worked for the same airline. We met each other in training. And when we had met each other, it was just as peers. I mean, we had like 30 people in our class. We were not close at that time. And then after training, we had become friends, and we had become actually really close friends for a while. And then I could tell he told me he wanted to be more than friends. And I just was very upfront that I was not interested in that. And so he had kind of like severed the friendship, which was fine by me. I think it's important to have boundaries. And then he had tried to kind of come back into my life a few different times. And it's so interesting because I look back now and I thought I had it under control. Like I didn't see the glaring red flags like I do now because I was young, probably because I was just giving him the benefit of the doubt. But he at one point was a friend, and then leading up to the attack, I mean, I hadn't spoken to him in a long time, but he had been calling me. I didn't know this, but he had been stalking me, like in every way you could probably stalk someone, which I had no idea at the time. And it makes so much more sense, of course, now with hindsight. He had hacked into our work software. So he knew the flights I was taking for work and for leisure. And I had no idea, but he had sent me some texts a couple months before, and I think I had blocked him, and I actually reached out to his friend who was a mutual of ours, and I asked her to check on him because I was just like, he seemed crazy was the word I used at the time. And I remember her audibly scoffing at me on the phone and saying, "Okay, Taylor." And that was kind of the end of our conversation, but I just sensed like he was not well.
Yeah.
He had been tracking my flights to go visit my boyfriend on the East Coast, which I had no idea, but I figured it out when he had me captive, because he said a few things that made me realize how he had known that.
And how long do you think that was going on? Like,
I don't know. I think when he had me captive, he had told me he'd been planning it for a month. So I'd known at least a month. I know he tracked the recent flight I had to go visit my boyfriend, which happened less than a week prior to my attack. But I remember I have this vivid memory of, I lived in Redondo Beach, and I drove down to go get shampoo at some like store in the strip mall, and it was dusk, and I remember parking, and I remember like picking my nose in the car because I had like a booger in my nose, and I was trying to get it out, and I had this feeling that someone was watching me. And it wasn't even a feeling, I knew someone was watching me, and then I was like embarrassed because like, let a girl pick her nose in peace. And I remember, I know exactly what spot I was parked in, and I had this sensation, this intuition that someone was watching me, not just looking my direction, but watching me.
because I want a couple things.
Yeah.
First of all, we, especially as women, are often dissuaded from trusting our intuition.
That's a whole nother conversation, but yes.
Yeah. What did it feel like in your body to say, like, when you are thinking, I know for a fact that someone is watching me?
At that specific example, you could compare it to just the hair on the back of your neck standing up. So it's a nervous system fear response that it's almost like, it's like your lizard brain. So it wasn't in my conscious, like I wasn't consciously thinking about it, but my body and my energy knew that someone was watching me. And like you mentioned, I think, especially for myself as an individual, but for women, we are discouraged from trusting and engaging with our intuition from a very young age. We are taught to not say no as little girls, to always say yes and always be polite, even if we feel like a boundary, even if we don't want to hug someone, and we're all, no, be nice. And for me, it was like, I was raised Mormon and going to these Mormon dances, and you always have to say yes if a guy asks you to dance, even if you don't want to. And I understand the social encouragement of why someone might encourage that. However, it all goes into teaching us to not prioritize our boundaries, our feelings, and our intuition.
Yeah. I think also we're also mocked when we do, like
Yes.
as if you are leveraging a degree of self-importance that is unearned.
Right.
So then when you are having a feeling like you had in your car that someone was watching you because they were, then your mind goes, well, like I'm really that important for someone to be sitting in their car staring at me because it's me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Okay, so when you were in the car and you really were like, someone's watching me, what did you do next?
At the time, I wasn't ruled by fear. I was ruled by adolescence, even though I was, I guess, 22. But I remember feeling like someone was watching me, and my instinct was like, okay, let me go get in and get out, like get what I need and then go home. And I remember looking around and not seeing anything. But I wasn't as hyper vigilant then, of course, as I am now, nor was I as sensitive to what was going on in my body and responding to it and engaging with that as I am now. And so, yeah, I just went in, I got what I needed, and I left. And there was, it was a pretty boring trip, but I just remember, I know for a fact, I'd bet my whole life on it, that he was in the parking lot watching me. I know it.
It's so like, when you think about, I mean, obviously not everyone has this sort of lived experience, but when you think about when you have had experience something traumatic. And you go back and all of a sudden it's almost like there are these indicators.
Oh, yeah.
Where it's almost like these mini alarms
Yeah.
that were sounding, but you had no context for it.
For sure.
And so that's what, because it's like people can Monday morning quarterback, and they will, and I've warned you of this, what could have been done, what should have been done, how, how you might be responsible for something. But at the end of the day, you really don't know what you don't know until you do, which is the reason why testimony teaching like you're doing today is so important, because you have the context now for it. And just to also, obviously you are feeling like you're in the space to do this, but a reason why I have shared some of my traumatic stories, including the break-in at my home, is because I remember so clearly watching like a Dateline or something where this woman was describing how she stayed alive when someone broke into her home. And when I say that it was like muscle memory for what to do, because I had seen that, I had thought about it. Like I had thought about it in my brain. And then when it happened, I started to do it. And that's what the hope is for us sitting down today. So let's go into the day that you were taken. What was that day like?
Well, first let me say, the shoulda, coulda, woulda, I've gone through that so many there's nothing anyone could tell me I shoulda, coulda, woulda done that I haven't told myself 12 inches from a mirror. Like, trust me, I've gone through the whole lowdown. And it doesn't mean that you would take accountability for something happening to you. It's more so, and I think this is so important. As I mentioned before, I thought I constantly felt like it wasn't that big of a deal. Like I could handle it, like him being crazy. I look back and the details I could tell you about him being crazy, you would be like, how did you not anticipate or like know that this was more serious? And I can't stress enough, like I'm an intelligent being. I think there were a few things going on, but I sincerely just thought it wasn't, I just constantly was like, it's not a big deal. I can handle it. I can talk to him about it and tell him like, this isn't I can reason with, you can't reason with everyone. But in my head, I was like, I'm an adult. I can have a conversation about it. Cause he was, I think like, I want to say 6, 7, maybe 8 years older than me. And that doesn't work. Like, that's the one thing I wish I could go back. Like, it doesn't matter how you feel confident that you could communicate your boundaries or that, no, this isn't that big of a deal. I can help smooth things over. You really can't control what's happening in someone else's mind. And it's not your responsibility to anticipate what could happen in someone else's mind. And so there were so many red flags I did not know were the color red. And it wasn't because I didn't have rose-colored glasses on. It was because I thought I was smarter. Almost like in a way I thought I just could handle it. It's almost like how, and this, I'm not trying to be offensive, but to speak to my ignorance of like hearing women who go through domestic violence and you hear stories of them staying, and you're like, how could they stay? Like he was beating you. And now I totally understand it because it doesn't have to do with the action. If you are outside of the situation and you're collecting data and you're looking at cause and effect and action, it's very easily to point out how simple a situation would be. But when you're in it with context, it's so different. And it makes me sad because a huge portion of that is, again, women just silencing their own intuition for the comfort of others, whether it's a partner, whether it's a community, whether it's a church community. You just see it all the time. So I just want to touch on that because I look back at a lot of red flags, and I read a book not too far after I escaped, and it really helped me go through and highlight all these red flags. And there was a part of me that felt almost just like, how could I not? Like, it's so obvious now looking back. But if anything, instead of feeling like stupid and shameful looking back, I look back with so much compassion toward my 22-year-old self who just thought she knew. She thought she was okay. She wanted it to be okay.
Right. That's the, yes,
Yeah.
the want, the desire for
Right.
it to be okay.
Right. And just the age and the ignorance and the lack of experience and circumstances like that.
I think it's important. It's really important to hear because the programming of how we learn to not stand in our truth,
Yeah.
to not express when we are uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's a lot of deprogramming. I think
Oh,
people
yeah.
are actively, sometimes it can take a lifetime, to get to that point, if at all.
Yeah.
But going back to the day that everything occurred. So
Yeah.
what was that day like?
It was a Thursday, and I had 3 or 4 days off of work in a row, which for a junior flight attendant never happens. And so I wanted to travel, and I really wanted to go to Paris just for a night because we fly free. And so just for fun. But I was so poor at the time. I mean, I probably had less than $1,000 in my bank account, and you have to pay taxes on the airports you fly into. And so I was like, I don't know if I should. I'm just going to stay home, and then I'll decide tomorrow. And so that was a Thursday, and that was October 8th, 2014. And I had talked to my boyfriend on the phone throughout the day. It was such a boring day that, again, I'll never take for granted ever again. I remember he bought me like food from across the country without Uber Eats and Grubhub. Like, that's the most romantic thing a guy can do. And so I had
That
eaten.
is impressive.
I know, right?
I was like,
So,
2014.
So I had gotten my burrito, and I went to Redondo Beach Pier, and I just sat on the beach like I did all the time. Just loved the ocean. And I just ate my food, my dinner. And I went home, and I remember I had Facebook at the time, which I haven't had since then. But I took a stupid picture of me, like pretending I was pregnant in the mirror with like my burrito belly. And that was my last post on a social media app, and just like dumb and stupid. And I remember I wore a maroon sweater to bed. And normally I never slept with a top on. And I remember putting that sweater on and thinking to myself, I'm going to get hot. I'm going to be uncomfortable when I sleep in this. But for some reason, I kept it on. And I am so grateful I did. You will not catch me sleeping nude ever again. And I went to bed, and I've always been afraid of the dark since I was little. So I always had my TV on. So I turned my TV on, and I went to bed, and I plugged my phone into the side table next to my bed, and I had no reason to believe that night was any different. I wish I could tell you there was this sensation I had, but there wasn't. It was very, very normal, and I went to sleep that Thursday night completely unaware of what was coming for me.
Wow. That maroon sweater detail, like, is so profound. Like, in a way, like, is there a casually profound? I mean, it's like, it's a detail.
Yeah.
Because when I think of my physical alarm button, like the mechanism to which I can turn the alarm on in my home. And this is my frame of reference to understand what you're saying, is I never, ever had that with me in my home. That day, like the day of the break-in, was the first day I had ever. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to bring this in with me. And it was a conversation, much like what you're saying about
why
the
am I
maroon
doing
sweater.
this?
Like,
okay, yeah.
you are having a conversation with yourself, and you might have even said something out loud, like, I'm going to get hot, like, why am I doing this? I don't know. We're doing it.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah.
it makes sense to do it. And stuff like that is really, like, we talk about the intuition part, but like your body, you'll do things in like almost this strange preparation for something that you don't know is coming, but someone, somewhere, something clearly is helping you. I just had to go back to that because I think that that's such a significant detail.
I had a lot of little details like that. That's the thing. Little things here and there throughout the day. You'll forget something like that ever happens if your day went on like normal.
Right.
But it's really incredible. And I've written quite a bit about this, of the concept of coincidence and how people make meaning of it. Because had I not had my television on or some sort of light source, this would have been totally different. Had I not fought back just enough to cause enough commotion for my phone to fall to the floor, I would have never survived. Like little things, because later he had told me what his plan was. And when I go back and look at what his plan was versus kind of how it unfolded, it really unfolded little pieces in my favor to eventually converge to allowing me to create an escape. Never would that have happened. It would have been very different if I was naked. It would have been very different if I didn't have a light on. I also had never touched a firearm. I'd seen them. I grew up in Missouri. Like, I had people in my family and friends who like hunted. So I'd seen rifles and things. But just 5 days before that, I was visiting my boyfriend on the East Coast. And he lived on an island. We were supposed to go to the beach and it was raining. And we were kind of bummed because we were supposed to have a beach day. And we started talking because he was in the military and we were talking about weapons and he was talking about his gun. And he's like, do you want to see? I was like, sure. And he's showing me the different parts of a gun. And he's like, well, have you ever shot a gun? I was like, no. And he's like, well, why don't we go to the shooting range? And I was like, okay, like we have nothing else to do. And we went to the shooting range where he taught me how to properly handle a firearm, how to properly and safely discharge a firearm, and how it worked. And the fact that that happened 5 days before I was going to be on the other end of a barrel of a firearm for the first time. And then there was a point during my being held captive that I had an opportunity, a very clear opportunity to take control of the firearm. But it's such an interesting idea to make sense of what's coincidence. Like these little details. And again, by themselves, they're kind of meaningless, depending on what meaning we give them. But together, the way things can unfold in our favor. Now, obviously, me being kidnapped and assaulted was not happening in my favor, but the way I was able to survive despite all of that is, I mean, you can call it a miracle, you can call it statistically improbable. I mean, I just remember the detectives being like completely shocked that I survived and telling me that. How lucky I was that I survived, which lucky is an interesting, I don't know, adjective to throw at someone.
Well, if of all the 1%ers that you could be, being a survivor with a 1% chance is, I mean, girl.
Yeah.
Girl.
Yep.
When we're thinking about the girl who went to bed with the maroon sweater on, who had her television on, if you could pause everything that was coming next, what would you tell her
oh my God,
that she should prepare for in terms of what she was going to go through?
Wow.